In the beginning, before the rise of mountains and seas, before the shaping of rivers and valleys, there was only the boundless void of chaos, a swirling expanse of nothingness and infinite potential, and from this primordial state emerged the first powers of creation, Gaia the earth who stretched her fertile body across the emptiness, and Uranus the sky who arched above her as a dome of endless heavens. And together they birthed the first generation of mighty beings, the Titans, vast and immortal, embodiments of the primal forces of existence, and yet their union was not harmonious, for Uranus feared the strength of his children and sought to suppress them, forcing many into the deep recesses of Gaia's womb, suffocating them in darkness, until Gaia's anguish became unbearable, and she conspired with her son Kronos, the youngest and most ambitious of the Titans, to overthrow Uranus, gifting him a sickle of unbreakable stone forged from the heart of the earth itself, and with it Kronos struck, casting down his father and seizing dominion over the cosmos, becoming ruler of gods and mortals alike. A new order of Titans reigning supreme, yet from the blood of Uranus that fell upon the earth came the Furies, spirits of vengeance, and from the sea foam born of his severed power rose Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, a sign that creation would forever be woven with both struggle and wonder, and though Kronos now sat upon the throne of the universe, a shadow hung over him, for a prophecy declared that he too would be overthrown by one of his own children, just as he had toppled his father, and so Kronos grew suspicious and consumed by fear, and when his wife Rhea bore him children, he devoured each one at birth, swallowing them whole to prevent the prophecy from unfolding. First Hestia, then Demeter, then Hera, then Hades, then Poseidon, one after another vanished into the cavernous stomach of Kronos, imprisoned within their father's dark belly, denied the light of existence. Until Rhea's heart could bear no more sorrow, and when she conceived her sixth child, she sought refuge upon the island of Crete, where in a secret cave beneath Mount Ida she gave birth to the infant destined to change the fate of gods and mortals, and that child was Zeus, small in form yet radiant with the spark of destiny, and Rhea, cunning and desperate, swaddled a stone in cloth and handed it to Kronos, who swallowed it greedily, believing he had consumed his last threat, while the true child was hidden away, nurtured by the nymphs of the forest and fed by the divine goat Amalthea, whose milk strengthened him, while the Cuorites, armored guardians, clashed their spears and shields together to drown out his cries. So Kronos would not hear his sons wailing from afar, and thus Zeus grew in secret, far from the tyrannical eye of his father, his spirit hardened by wilderness, his body strengthened by the nectar of divine nourishment, until he became not just a youth but a formidable god, wise and determined, and when the time was right he rose against Kronos, guided by Gaia and aided by the goddess Metis, who concocted a potion that forced Kronos to vomit forth the children he had devoured, releasing Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, who emerged unharmed though long imprisoned, now standing by the side of their brother Zeus, united in a cause greater than themselves, to bring an end to the tyranny of Kronos and the old order of the Titans. And so began the Titanomachy, the great war of gods and Titans, a clash of unfathomable magnitude that shook the heavens and split the earth, with Zeus and his siblings calling themselves the Olympians, for they made Mount Olympus their seat of power, hurling their defiance at the might of the elder generation, while Kronos and the Titans gathered upon Mount Olympus, their bastion of strength, and for 10 years the battle raged. Thunder and fire echoing across the cosmos, the sea boiling, the land quaking, the sky torn apart by storms of divine wrath, and at first the war seemed endless, for the Titans were vast and powerful, and though the Olympians fought with courage, the forces of age-old chaos pressed heavily upon them, until Zeus, ever resourceful, descended into the depths of Tartarus, where he released the Centaurs, the hundred-handed giants, and the Cyclopes, the one-eyed smiths of primordial flame, whom Kronos had long imprisoned, and in gratitude they forged gifts of power for Zeus and his brothers, a thunderbolt of searing lightning for Zeus, a mighty trident for Poseidon, and a helm of invisibility for Hades. weapons of cosmic force that turned the tide of battle, for with thunderbolt in hand Zeus unleashed storms of such brilliance that the Titans trembled, lightning cracking through their ranks, while Poseidon struck the earth and sea with his trident, raising waves that swallowed mountains, and Hades, unseen beneath his helm, struck terror into their foes, scattering their will to resist, until at last the Olympians triumphed, casting the Titans into the abyss of Tartarus, bound by chains. Unbreakable, guarded by the Centimanes, so they could never again threaten the harmony of the cosmos, and thus Zeus emerged as the victor, lord of gods and men, the new ruler of the universe, enthroned upon Mount Olympus. From where he would govern with thunderbolt in hand, a symbol of divine justice and authority, and to his brothers he gave domains befitting their nature. To Poseidon he granted the sea and all its depths, to Hades the underworld and the realm of the dead, while he himself retained the sky, the storms, and the lofty height of Olympus. So the three sons of Kronos divided creation among themselves, and with their sisters Hera, Demeter, and Hestia they formed the Olympian Council. A divine family whose influence would stretch across ages, shaping the fate of mortals and the unfolding of history itself. Yet even as Zeus reigned supreme, his story was not one of serenity but of endless trials, for though he had fulfilled the prophecy by overthrowing Kronos, he knew that power invited challenges, and even gods were not free from struggle, for the earth itself, Gaia, mother of all, resented the imprisonment of her Titan children, and from her wrath she birthed a new terror. The monstrous Typhon, a being of colossal strength with serpents for legs and fire blazing from his eyes, whose roar shook the very heavens, and when he rose against Olympus, the gods trembled. Some fleeing in fear, but Zeus alone stood firm, hurling thunderbolt after thunderbolt, their blinding fury clashing against Typhon's flames, until at last Zeus struck him down, hurling the monster beneath Mount Etna, where his writhing still sends forth fire and smoke, a reminder of the power of Zeus and the dangers that lurk beneath the order of the world. And thus the reign of Zeus was secured, not only by inheritance but by battle, by courage, and by the will to impose harmony upon chaos. And from this moment forth he was revered as father of gods and men, the all-powerful, the thunderer, the guardian of justice, the protector of oaths, the dispenser of fate, and his name would echo across centuries, carried in the hymns of poets, the prayers of mortals, and the myths that endure as the eternal heartbeat of human imagination. And so it was that Zeus, the wielder of thunder and lord of the heavens, sat upon the radiant throne of Olympus, crowned not by gold or jewel but by the immensity of his power and the reverence of gods and mortals alike, and from this lofty seat he surveyed the expanse of creation, the vast seas ruled by Poseidon, the shadowed realms guarded by Hades, the fertile earth nurtured by Demeter, the hearth fire kept eternal by Hestia, and the halls of Olympus made splendid by Hera, who became queen. Beside him, and though his reign began with triumph, Zeus knew that the preservation of order was a labor unending, for the cosmos, though tamed, still carried the restless echo of chaos within it. And the will of mortals and immortals alike was prone to pride, defiance, and ambition, forces that forever tested the sovereignty of the King of Gods. For Zeus was not only a warrior but a judge, not only a ruler by might but the guardian of law and the sanctity of oath, for in the minds of the ancients an oath sworn by Zeus was binding beyond death itself, and those who broke faith invited his wrath, which fell in the form of thunderbolts hurled from the sky, purging falsehood and punishing arrogance. Yet Zeus was not merely a god of retribution but also of protection, for he was invoked by hosts of travelers, by households seeking prosperity, by kings desiring justice, and by warriors calling upon his strength before battle. And thus his power was both feared and beloved, terrible in anger yet magnificent in mercy. Still, the myths of Zeus do not portray him as flawless, for the ancients did not imagine their gods as distant ideals but as beings of passion, complexity, and contradiction. And so Zeus is remembered not only as the embodiment of cosmic order but also as a figure whose desires often drew him into conflict with mortals and immortals alike, for his unions with goddesses and mortal women alike produced a lineage of heroes and demigods who shaped the history of myth, such as Perseus, Heracles, and Helen of Troy, children whose destinies were woven with both glory and tragedy. And each story revealed not only the might of Zeus but the unending interplay between divine will and mortal freedom. Hera, his queen, resented many of these unions and often opposed the children born of them, and thus the mythic tales are filled with the tension of divine family, of jealousy, love, vengeance, and reconciliation, reminding mortals that even on Olympus the bonds of kinship and marriage are fraught with trial. Yet despite quarrels and rivalries, Zeus held the council of gods together, his thunderbolt a constant reminder that his authority could not be denied, and when disputes arose among the immortals, it was his judgment that settled them, his word that established peace, and his decree that mortals accepted as the will of fate itself. The poets tell that Zeus, though enthroned in glory, walked often among mortals, sometimes disguised as a humble traveler, to test their hospitality, for hospitality was sacred to him, and those who welcomed strangers found blessing, while those who turned away guests in cruelty or scorn met ruin, and so his presence was felt not only in the grandeur of storms but in the humble act of sharing bread, for Zeus embodied the principle that justice lives not only in the heavens but in the hearts of men. Yet challenges to his reign never ceased, for the memory of Kronos and the Titans stirred beneath the depths of Tartarus, and the earth groaned with the unrest of monsters, and there were gods and giants who dared to test Olympus. Such as in the Titanomachy, when the giants born of Gaia rose in rebellion, their towering forms threatening to unseat the Olympians, and only through the valor of Zeus and the aid of his children, particularly the strength of Heracles, was order restored. For thunderbolts rained upon the giants, and the sky itself seemed aflame with divine war, until once more Zeus's dominion stood unshaken. In another tale, Prometheus, the Titan who defied Zeus by stealing fire for mankind, suffered the god's wrath, chained to a rock while an eagle consumed his liver day after day, a punishment as eternal as the fire he bestowed, and though Zeus's justice seemed harsh, it revealed the eternal balance between divine authority and mortal striving. For the gift of fire marked humanity's ascent, and Zeus's response marked the boundary mortals must never cross, the line between reverence and hubris. Still, Zeus did not erase mankind for this defiance, but allowed them to endure, suggesting that even in punishment there was a deeper wisdom, for through struggle mortals grew, and through trial they found their destiny. And in this way the myths paint Zeus not only as an enforcer but as a teacher, whose actions shaped the very moral fabric of human existence. Across generations, poets sang of Zeus as the dispenser of Moira, of fate, the one whose will was woven into the tapestry spun by the fates themselves, for though even Zeus could not undo destiny once it was decreed, he was the guardian of its unfolding, the overseer of cosmic balance, and thus he became the symbol of inevitability, of the truth that even gods must bow to the eternal order beyond them, a paradox that lent his story both grandeur and humility. As the ages passed, the worship of Zeus spread across the Greek world, temples rose in his honor, none more splendid than the great temple at Olympia, where the colossal statue of Zeus, wrought by Phidias, stood among the wonders of the ancient world, depicting him enthroned,
holding a figure of Nike, the goddess of victory, in one hand and a scepter crowned with an eagle in the other, his form radiant with the majesty of divine kingship. And in the valley of Olympia the Olympic Games were held, not merely as contests of athletic prowess but as sacred festivals dedicated to Zeus, where mortals sought to honor him with feats of strength and skill, reminding all that human achievement too was a reflection of divine power. In every city-state of Greece, Zeus was worshipped under many epithets: Zeus Xenios as protector of guests, Zeus Horkios as guardian of oaths, Zeus Ombrios as bringer of rain, Zeus Panhellenios as unifier of the Greek peoples, and each epithet revealed a facet of his boundless domain. For he was not limited to storms and sky alone but encompassed the very principles that sustain civilization, hospitality, justice, prosperity, and unity. Yet as time moved on, the stories of Zeus also spread beyond Greece, mingling with the myths of Rome where he was worshipped as Jupiter, his identity reshaped but his essence enduring, and later, as new religions rose, Zeus remained as a symbol in memory, not worshipped as once before but remembered as a reflection of humanity's ancient yearning to see order in the heavens, to imagine that the thunder was the voice of a father, and that justice was anchored not only in human law but in the will of the divine. The legend of Zeus is not merely the tale of a god's rise to power but a mirror of the human soul. For within his triumphs and his struggles lies the eternal truth that power must be tempered with wisdom, that justice must walk hand in hand with mercy, and that even the mightiest ruler is bound by destiny. To speak of Zeus is to speak of the greatness of the ancient imagination, of poets who gazed upon stormy skies and saw in them the presence of a king, of worshippers who lit fires and whispered prayers believing that their words rose to the ears of the thunderer, of sculptors and builders who shaped stone into monuments that declared to future generations the reverence their ancestors held for the divine. And though centuries have passed and empires have fallen, though the temples of Olympia lie in ruins and the statue of Zeus is lost to time, the myth endures, carried in stories retold, in books preserved, in art reimagined, and in the hearts of those who seek meaning in the ancient past. And in this endurance lies the true immortality of Zeus, for gods exist not only in the sky but in the memory of humankind, and as long as thunder rolls across the heavens and lightning splits the darkened clouds, there will be those who remember the mighty father of Olympus, Zeus, ruler of gods and men, whose reign was carved not only into stone and song but into the very soul of civilization, eternal as the storms he commanded, vast as the heavens he claimed, and majestic as the myths that will forever carry his name.